In the meantime, let's just get into this. You can listen to the audio, watch my face for now, which is not the prettiest thing, but I will try to see if I can load up the presentation and share the screen of the presentation while the audio is playing. But the first 26, 27 minutes of his presentation, which is a slideshow, was essentially on the YouTube channel. So you can watch that. It really talks about Actinver services they offer, but it's really the Q&A question part that is important. So I'm going to share that right now. You can listen to the audio, and then I'll try to get something else up on the screen besides my ugly face while you listen to it. And then I'll jump back in towards the end, or maybe pause in between and ask questions if you have some in there. So here's where it kind of started with the Q&A part.
Well, this will be it around what are around the services. Bill, I don't know if you would like me to go through the expat information I had. We review it by Vallarta. What do you say?
You can talk a little bit about it, but I think a lot of the people that are on the call, a good majority of them are already expats here. So,
okay.
And I don't think really the focus of this call is really why expats are moving to Mexico and considering it here. I'd really like to focus on the banking services you offer, the investment services. Now, you touched on the US dollars, how that could be held at a bank. There were some questions I'd seen with regards to Canadian. So maybe you've already touched on how US banking is done here with Actinver. Can you touch on, and the Canadian clients are opening this the same process to open the account, but does Actinver allow holding Canadian funds in their account? And if not
yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. I mean, a lot of Canadians, what they do, they exchange the Canadian dollars into US and send them over here, or they send it to our exchange account in Canadian dollars, so we get them exchanged as well. But we need the consentment of the customer on the price that is being exchanged. Okay, we don't do it here. And I just see a question about Adele here about sending. How much do you knock off the mid-market rate? Example: I wired some US dollars when the rate was 1950, and I got 1880. No, that's too much. I mean, if it's 1950, you might get 1941, 1942, or something like that. But that's too much. Question two: if I invest in stocks to Actinver, how much is deducted for capital gains at tax time? And mortgage loans, what is the rate of? Okay, when you do a sale of your stocks, you get a 10% capital gain for stocks. Okay, and mortgage loans, we don't do mortgage loans. We do loan advance or back-to-back loan, and our rate is 13.45 in pesos right now. What a lot of people have been doing is, in the past years, they left the guarantee in dollars and they had a mortgage, so the dollars would grow. Or right now, there is a better exchange rate. They take the benefit of the exchange rate that is at close to 20, but they had a loan in pesos. Okay, we don't do Canadian dollar, no, not yet. Do you have an office in Playa del Carmen? Playa? No, we do have in Cancun, Lisa. We have an office in Cancun. And we have an advisor that works for Cozumel all the time, as well as servicing people there. RFC needed. If you want to register yourself as a Mexican with RFC, then yes, we ask for the RFC. If you're going to register as a foreigner with your social security number or your TIN number, we don't need the RFC. Does Actinver requires the user to open an account? Yes, we do. And we do require the U.S. Social Security number when you are from the U.S. And this is not because banks are reporting to any foreign tax system. In my experience, I've been in banking since 2009, and I just seen one time that an account was blocked, actually. And it was blocked by system. It was because someone was not doing something right with the IRS in the States, and then his accounts got blocked all throughout the world. Yeah, but it is not that Actinver or any Mexican bank is just say, all these Americans or all these Canadians have money here. It's just on open request. Yeah. Minimums of investment accounts. You can start from 10,000 pesos. That is when you work with a consultor, which the service to get access to basic services. And if you want to get the full access to the operatives and all the funds and everything, you need to go up to 1.5 million pesos. Sorry, Vin, I think I just went to the chat and I didn't answer your question.
No, that's fine. I was just going to do the same thing, but you got onto it before I did, so it's all good. Now, so there's no reporting requirement from your end to the American IRS or the Canadian CRA. Do you have a reporting requirement to the Mexican government in terms of what a client has with you guys? And is that different if they're registered with you via the U.S. social insurance number, or if they have a RFC here in Mexico? Could you maybe explain the differences between whether it's wise to stay and have your social insurance number with your account, or the process that's involved in reporting if you're a Mexican resident with an RFC?
Well, the thing is, every Mexican resident with an RFC, Hacienda, which is our IRS office, has access to all the information of the RFC, of whatever movement, saying that every Mexican operating account should give out an RFC. For example, my son just turned 18. He wanted to open an account. He needed to go into the SAT office, get an RFC, because he was being requested an RFC to open an account. So it doesn't mean that Actinver said, all these RFCs are receiving this amount of money. But the Mexican IRS can see whatever the RFCs are receiving money throughout Mexico. Okay? I don't know if that answers. On whether you do your social security number or RFC, if you're already a Mexican, then you should have your RFC in place. You should be asked for it. Yeah. Even we have a lot of Mexicans that were born in the U.S., for example. So like Mexicans that speak Spanish, live here year round, and they just went over there to born, or their mother went over there to born. These people are asked for the social security number to open an account because they're an American citizen. So that will always be requested, even if you're a nationalized Mexican.
Great. Another question there was, are accounts insured, and what dollar value are they insured for?
In Mexico, it's called UDIs, which is Unidad de Inversión, and right now add up to around 3.4 million pesos.
0.4. Okay. So it's about 150,000, 160,000 US roughly.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
But also, if you hold assets, the thing is, what it needs to be insured in is cash and promissory notes and things from the bank, right? But if you hold an investment fund or stock, all these investment funds and stock our custodian is called Indeval, which is a government organism. So whatever happens to any Mexican bank, the Indeval is depository of your titles, meaning that any investment assets that has a title or a stock are deposited in this organism. Okay.
That's actually interesting. Can we touch on that? Because in the US or in Canada, if you have an investment bank buying stocks or mutual funds or whatever, usually it's the bank itself or the investment broker that has custodians. So from what I'm hearing from you is all Mexican banks, when you're buying securities, you're not the custodian of those securities. You don't have the share certificates or the registration for it. It's all with the Mexican government. So
yes,
even on a possible default with one of the banks here, your securities are still registered with the depository of the Mexican government.
Yeah, it's called Instituto para el Depósito de Valores. Like
okay.
Yeah, Indeval. Yeah.
Great. Now, I guess the other question is, you offer obviously financial service and advisory services, so people have access to invest in the stock market through you guys. and they, the wealth advisor can actually put you into mutual funds, but you also have access to securities in the US through it. Now, could you maybe explain the difference of how you guys offer advisory services and wealth management services that are through the advisor that will put you in a mutual fund versus someone that might want to be self-directed and have a stock account with you and they want to buy and sell individual securities?
Because you're diversifying, so you're investing in a new country.
Advisor.
Investing in Mexico, you can invest also in everything you invest in the world. Let's say, and it is a platform that you can open account yourself and manage your investment. Like you can buy any stocks that is in the Mexican market. You can buy most of the instruments that are there, and there is around 218 investment funds access to that platform as well. So that's kind of for the self-managed investor. That is, I don't know if that was a question. Yeah. And for the sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can. Sorry, finish your thought, and then I'll kind of.
Yeah, and on the other hand is in our US, I mean, we can do some investments that are worldwide that are caught in every market. We can do from Mexico, but if we have someone that needs specialized attention in, let's say, US or Europe, then we have offices in the US, and we need to get them directly in contact with this advisor because we don't have the license to advise in the US, so we need to get them through, or in Europe as well. Okay.
So someone who has an account with you guys or are looking at securities, and they're US based securities, they would have to go through the office in the US if they needed consulting on various mutual funds or investment vehicles that are in the US, right?
If they only quote in the US, we do send them there. If these instruments are quoted in the Mexican market, we can manage it.
Okay, so I did a bit of research on the stock market here in Mexico, and so you have two options. You can use your financial advisor and let them execute security trades for you, or you can do self-directed opening with access to your own account. You can buy and sell stocks your own. From what I understand, you mentioned there's about 250 or so. There's about 300 Mexican companies that are under 300 that are traded on the Mexican stock exchange if you choose to purchase a Mexican security. But from my understanding, there's about 3,000 securities in total, which include a lot of the big name American stocks, even some Canadian stocks that I've looked at. And that's through the Mexican stock exchange itself. So if someone has an account with you guys and they choose to buy certain ETFs that are traded in the Canadian market or in the US market, or they're very proficient in trading themselves, will they have access to all of those securities to trade within their own? So there's about 3,000 or so roughly that they will have access to, correct?
Yes. In the Mexican companies is around 140 in the Mexican Bolsa Stock Exchange.
Okay.
But we have the SIC, which is the Sistema Internacional de Cotizaciones, international quoting system. So there are around 3,000 assets going through there. And when someone's looking for a new asset that doesn't quote, for example, we have helped customers to bring this asset to Mexico, and they have a cost of 15,000 pesos to import it and to start quoting in Mexico as well.
Okay, so that's great. And if someone had money with you guys and they were either using your financial services or self-trading, what is the capital gains rate on buying and selling securities?
10%.
Still 10%. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I think we've covered that topic. You and I could probably dive into it a lot more if we wanted to, but that would be for another call. There's a couple more other questions here. So Lisa is asking, in case of death, would American families need Mexican power of attorney? What's the legal protocol there?
What do you mean again? I didn't get the question.
I guess she's asking, in case of a death, if you had an account, someone had an account with you, would the American families need a Mexican power of attorney, or is that covered in the trust? And then you have, you have a designated beneficiary.
Well, we ask for a designated beneficiary all the time. I mean, we need to put a beneficiary in the accounts. and that's normally how people do it. Okay, so normally we ask for the beneficiary information, but that is something we have been doing with the last years with no problem. We just need the death certificate, and with the death certificate, we make the process. We do need an account in Mexico where to send the money because of processes or compliance. So we do send the money to, well, normally their sons, their daughters, their brothers, to the account they open in Mexico, and it takes maybe a week. It is a very transparent process. Yeah.
Okay. Then another follow-up question is: can a person change the designated beneficiary during the lifetime, their life?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We need physical. We still need physical signature for that, but it can be done. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the big questions now is, this is kind of going off topic of Actinver itself, but a lot of people have been asking is the US dollar peso exchange rate. Obviously, a few years ago, it was well above 20. Then it hit a low of about 16.30. Now we're hovering, in that 19.20 range. What are your thoughts on the Mexican peso US dollar exchange rate as you see it right now? What are the factors, the decisions that Actinver looks at when they're trying to do price prediction of that exchange rate? Obviously, you guys have been in the Mexican market for quite a while. What do you think is the biggest contributing factors to this exchange rate? And maybe now with the elections over, how do you see the exchange rate? I'm not going to ask you to forecast because it's hard to, but if you could explain maybe some of your thoughts or Actinver's thoughts on the peso exchange rate, how the U.S. elections could affect it. Obviously, there's two different parties in the U.S., so each one may affect the peso differently. But outside of the U.S. election, and you can touch on the U.S. election, how you think it'll personally affect the peso, but outside of that, what has been the biggest drivers of the FX rate with the US dollar peso rate?
Well, right now in the past years, we did got to 24, 25 back in the pandemic when everybody was nervous. Yeah. We saw a lot of panic purchases, of course. Then it went down up till 16.40, 16.30 about a few months ago. That was, when it went down or lower than 18, it was already out of the charts. Okay, so when we talk to analysts or economists that were forecasting this, thank you for telling me you're not going to ask me to forecast. It's very hard. Below 18 or below 1750 was already off the charts for many. Okay, so if you check and if you see the whole economists and the whole financial institutions forecast for the Mexican dollar exchange rate, it is around, or it was around 1850 and 20 pesos. So we kind of just stepped in that area right now where what was expected to happen. I think there was a lot of optimism in the peso. Before, not that is bad. I think there's some very good things happening in Mexico. But we had billions of dollars coming into Mexico because of nearshoring, for example. So all these dollars coming from nearshoring were converted into pesos and making an artificial purchase of pesos, so keeping the peso up. Okay, so now politics, we had the new president, which can be a very smart one, but the thing is now they have majority in the Congress and there is a fear they can change the constitution for bad. Okay, so what we think and we have seen here with analysis, there can be changes. We don't think they're going to be bad changes, but at the end right now, nervous of what's going on, people's nervous about it. So if you take a culture that has been into dollar for protecting the wealth, and then they got disappointed, let's say last year, because we had many people really in a hurry to make up those, let's say 6 pesos or 7 pesos up to 22, 23, So when they saw the new president winning and saw this majority, a bunch of again, and the dollar start gaining traction. Yeah. If you add up to that, not that companies stop investing, but of course, the nearshoring effect just, pause for a little bit to see what's going on with the new ruling and with the new government. And also, when there is Mexican and US elections in the same year, we have record volatility. So kind of people just waiting on the side to see what's happened, to see what's going on, what's going to happen. Okay, so the U.S. election normally, what we try to do as financial advisors really is to take advantage of volatility, and that's why I present by a few products that we do. Also with the elections volatility, what we do here is we keep our doors our phones and our operational system open even on election weekend when we can allow customers to make more money out of their investments. So not that we or no one has forecast a 22, 23 high. Some people see a 2050 maybe for the end of next year, but it's kind of between 2050 and 18 pesos. Where is the exchange rate projected? Okay,
2050.
2050 to 1850. That's what most economists have in their numbers. Okay. Even when it was like 1630. Okay, that's what the real value in their head was before.
Sure. So you touched on nearshoring. There's a couple of questions around that. From my experience, some of my research, over the last 10 years, especially with Trump, when he was in power and putting sanctions on China, there had been a lot of investments coming in from the U.S. Into Mexico for FDI, foreign direct investments. Now, China has picked up investments here in Mexico, but from some of the charts that I've seen, the amounts of dollars that are coming in from the U.S. are significantly more than in China. So maybe could you explain a little more of what you guys are seeing in the dynamics of how much capital is coming into Mexico for nearshoring? And
yes,
do you suspect that trend will continue going forward?
Yes, we do. And let me just share a slide that I have here about nearshoring. Give me 1 sec.
And while he's looking for that slide, if you guys have any other questions or any other topics that you want to discuss, please put it in the chat. I still believe. It's while he's looking for. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay, this is what we get official from the Mexican economic department. Okay, so the first quarter of 2024, we had give me 1 sec, 20.3 billion of investment in nearshoring, and we have United States as top with 52%, then Germany 9%. And so go on, and they don't have China in this chart. Yeah. On information on 2023 and 2022, being what I've seen in the charts is around 14 to 15% comes from China, and the rest is very, very close to what we see here in this chart. Yeah.
So China has really dropped off in their investments in this past year. Then is what you're saying?
Only first quarter 2024. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
And it seems, a lot of these other countries, and I think even with that, and that 20 billion you mentioned, 20.3 billion, that's US dollars, obviously, right?
US dollars, yes. Yeah. And what was very interesting about nearshoring in the last part of 2023, Vin and everyone, is that they're reinvesting the profits. The companies are reinvesting their profits in Mexico. Yeah, so that's kind of gives us an idea of the level of confidence and competitive advantages they're seeing in Mexico that was not seen before. Before, a company used to come to Mexico and take all the profits back to their own land and to do different. So this kind of changes the game a little bit.
That's interesting. Now, so they're reinvesting it, and I guess the Mexican government's encouraging it. I know I had followed the markets in India. I was born in India. So, there was always contention of investing in India because it was always hard to repatriate funds out of it. What's Mexico's policy around, now this is for big business who's starting here in Mexico, and then they want to expatriate that funds out. What is there challenges that you see in doing that? Requirements on the government's end in terms of having to leave a certain amount here in Mexico, or can someone just close up shop and then all of a sudden take all their money out of here?
Yes, you can. There are Mexican entrepreneurs that manage their wealth in the States or some other place, and they have the right to take the money wherever they want. Mexico is very open on that side. There's no restrictive laws, or very few restrictive laws. Yeah.
Okay. And I remember from our presentation, the breakfast presentation here in Vallarta, you'd been talking quite a bit about how globalization around the world, we're starting to see a bit of a trend to not end globalization, but a lot of countries are looking at manufacturing within their own space, building their own internal economies. But yet Mexico in the last little while has opened up its economies even more and has adopted this globalization policy. So maybe could you explain a little bit about that and what you see in terms of a trend happening there?
Well, precisely, Vin, I didn't get the whole picture of what you're asking. I mean, how Mexican economy is opening to international, or what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, was Mexico a closed economy, let's say 15, 20 years ago? When did it start opening its economy up for a foreign direct investment? And is there a sense that they're going to stop any of that or not?
Yeah, I think everything started when the PRI lost for the first time back in late 90s, if I recall well, or early 2000s, So the PRI was like the reign, was like the king in Mexico, and nobody had confidence of what was going on. Then came the PAN, then came the PRI again, now came Morena, everything. But at the end, it's kind of like if Mexico was like not doomed, but like if the PRI was the witch back then, and nobody wants to come in. They knew it was like a president, but he was a king, or it was a monarchy.
Okay.
So nobody could decide what's to go on. But after that, it just started. And I mean, I'm originally from Mazatlan. I know the Vallarta area and all these areas. And I mean, I have people from outside and foreigner businesses since I'm used to it. But when you see, for example, I also visited Mexico City a lot. And when you see all this opening, was maybe in the beginning of the 2000s.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I don't see if any other questions here. Hold on. Someone's asking, interested in your opinion of value of home prices in Mexico, especially beach cities. Actually, maybe we can even touch on that. The real estate market in Mexico boomed quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years, significant rises. And maybe if someone had sold a property in the last 6 months and converted that back to US dollars, they've done very well. But obviously now with the US dollar start rising against the peso, do you think this boom in the Mexican real estate market can continue? Are we going to see a correction? Obviously now, if the dollar does go to this 2050 price point on the peso, it becomes a little bit cheaper for foreigners to buy into Mexico. So maybe you can share your thoughts on some of the trends on the real estate market that you see. And
yeah, I think there are going to be some opportunities because maybe for the past 9 to 11 months, there are a few developers and a few realtors that change their prices into pesos. Yeah. So, I mean, I did research for about 8 years and I did mortgages for foreigners as well. So I understand the market. So I had people calling me saying, man, I'm going to change my prices into pesos. I said, man, you really made a lot of money on the dollars back then. And why doing this now, right? So if you cut up someone that changed their prices into pesos in the past 10 to 12 months, you might be getting a very good opportunity. Yeah. But normally in Mexico, whether prices stay the same or stabilize, but I haven't seen the lower prices, never. Mostly in touristic places. Yeah. Maybe Oaxaca or Huatulco is a beach place. There's always high demand. Maybe the city of Oaxaca, Mexico City in some places, but there is a population. The population in Mexico is still growing, and the medium class is always growing. So it is a country in a way, it is a developing country. So the acquisition power is always growing, and it's always expected to grow a little bit more. So back then when we had the crisis of 2009, 2008, mortgage, and also the flu coming into these places, I used to work for developers, and also in the Developers Association. So we make a study and say, maybe we may lower prices. It was a no-no for all the developers, and the banks just cut the interest rate, and they may get a chance for the developers to make their money. But it's a very, very different dynamic. Mexican economy moves a lot slower than it does in developed countries. And this decision, the home prices are not so sensitive as there are in other places. They might not go up so fast, but I don't see a drop in prices.
Yeah, and I think for some of the audience here, as well as I'm going to be posting this on my YouTube channel, I had a conversation yesterday with a real estate agent down here in Vallarta for a good 2-3 hours yesterday, and we were talking about some of the fundamentals of the market for real estate, and it seems like there's been a lull here for the last little while. In fact, he mentioned that it is now a buyer's market where you can actually underbid the asking price and they're taking it.
Yes.
But he suspects that may change coming this fall with the election, because there is this whole polarized economy in the U.S. with the left and the right, and one party is going to win, so it's going to piss off the other party, and that other party might consider, well, hell, I'm out of here, I want to go to Mexico and live. So there could be some demand come in from that. I'm not really accounting on that or relying on it, but I think more so of the way I see the Mexican economy and the market here for real estate in particular is you don't have a leveraged market here. Everyone back in Canada and the US, for the most part, they have mortgages, huge mortgages. So when you get a crisis or something that happened like in 08, 09, you get a liquidity event, you're getting forced out of it. But the Mexican nationals really own a lot of their property outright. So could you...
and you know how long does it take to do a foreclosure in Mexico?
Well, it takes quite a while, and actually, I'm glad you actually brought that up. I'd like to talk to you about your experience as a bank on buying foreclosure properties. That's something I've always been curious about here in Mexico. So maybe you can explain that process of what happens in a foreclosure and how someone can actually buy a property that is in foreclosure.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we don't manage mortgages and we don't manage foreclosure inside the bank, but I have some experience about it. So in Mexico, for you to get a foreclosure, for a bank to do a foreclosure on a person takes around 6 to 8 years. Yeah, so it's not easy. Like that people cannot pay, and it will take very, very long time to get them out of the house. Okay, and this has a lot to do with the Mexican financial system that is always protecting the user. So Mexico government is a very protectionist government at some point, because I just have to go back saying that if U.S. banking collapse, it will not have impact in Mexico was a question that Lisa Riley did a few minutes ago. And of course, there's going to be an impact in the economy because of the dollar value and everything. But Mexican banks are not too big to fail, meaning that they're not protected by the government as a whole. We have certain amounts per customer, but the bank itself, they're not protected, okay? There was one event back in the 80s that made a big mess in the Mexican economy and brought the rates really, really high. People couldn't pay their mortgages and stuff, and that was because banks were protected by governments. Now it is very, very different, okay? So I don't see that going on. So it is not so easy to get foreclosure or to get a foreclosure on a property in Mexico. I know in other countries it might get to 3 to 4 months and you're out of the property, right? Because everything is in place. So Mexico, it takes a little bit longer, so it's not so easy. You can get some foreclosure opportunities, but then sometimes you need to get the people out of the house, right? Like if you buy, it's like you buy the trial, like you buy the juicio, we call it here. You don't really buy the property, but you buy the right to own the property. Yeah, that's how sometimes foreclosure is managed in Mexico.
So do you recommend anyone consider foreclosures given how long it takes if they're considering, I can buy a foreclosure, save 30-40% compared to the companies in the area? Is it even worth it given how long it takes?
Look, I've met some people that have done good business on it, Vin. I mean, they're lawyers, so they have a good lawyer firm. I did it myself in a very small property once, and didn't turn out that profitable, you know.
Okay. Well, I actually want to circle back to the stock markets. Obviously, we've seen the stock markets rise significantly in the U.S. and recently a correction. But I've shared charts with the group, the Investor and Entrepreneur Mexico group on Facebook, a long time ago. And it was charts I just found from other people discussing it, but how undervalued the Mexican stock market is compared to a lot of other stock markets around the world. Now, there's only a handful. I mean, I say a handful because, I think the number was kind of under 300, 200 and something. Why is it that the Mexican stock market isn't getting the same levels of discovery and appreciation? I guess the question would really come down to, is someone who is looking to have stock investments in Mexico, do you think as a financial, I don't know if you're a financial advisor per se, but does it make sense to look at some of these Mexican stocks or stick with the US big name tech things that have been going up and down like yo-yos lately?
Yeah, well, most days, why it has low volume is because of that thing. I mean, if you're an investor and you want to invest in the market and you have the option to invest in let's say, a Mexican tech company or an American very famous tech company, normally the American tech company attracts you a little bit more. Yeah, it is because of communication market. But what is very interesting in the Mexican market is that normally you have only one or two company per industry. Like in the fintech sector, you have only one. In the banking sector, you have three. In the retail sector, you have two, three of them. So if you go on, if you do seasonal investing on when goods are being more expensive or when inflation is getting there, or if you want to do retail and you go up to the end of the year when they do better, so you can time the market very well on that side. But there is not such thing like value investing or these uptrends so fast and so high like there are in the States.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you're almost saying the Mexican economy, I don't know if you're saying this, but from what I'm gathering is, I mean, in terms of what's out there for publicly traded companies, there's only a few in each vertical, maybe outside of the banking, because you get all the big banks who are trading there, but there's only a few options that people have in terms of a market sector to invest in. Do you see that changing where you're going to start to see some of these mid-sized companies in Mexico that are private moving to the public markets, or are these family-owned private companies or private-owned companies, are they still just keeping that way? They don't really trust the public sector market and the stock markets and stuff like that.
I think they're going to start being quoted in the States or in Canada. I mean, many Mexican companies. Yeah. Like, I mean, in the last one we had, the last listed company we had in Mexico was America, which is a football team, America. And that was the only IPO in the past 8 months that was done here. Okay. So it's a very famous company. It is known by most Mexicans. But if you take into account that only 4 in 1,000 Mexicans invest their money, so it's not so easy to get them in the market.
Do you think if there was more capital available, and I'm very curious about is how companies here raise capital, if they do? I mean, do they go through something like the U.S. does? How easy is it for someone to get a bank loan to expand their business in Mexico?
Yes, there are a lot of debt issuances, but not so much stock issue. I mean, a lot of people use the market to get some debt, but they don't use that much to get the stocks out in the market. Mexican entrepreneurs are not building a company to sell it. It's not into the Mexican culture till now. Like, I mean, I've met very dynamic entrepreneurs from all throughout the world, and they have a vision, building a company, put in the market, and then sell it all in maybe 8 years. And that's not what happened in Mexico. Mexico, the company will be like the entrepreneur's baby. They take care of it all their life, then they pass it on to their kids. and this and that, but it's very different. A mezcal company would be great, Lisa. Yes, that would be a very nice. We have Jose Cuervo in the market, but we don't have mezcal yet.
Oh, okay. Do you find outside of small businesses, you see a lot of expats opening up small businesses, whether it's a restaurant or anything like that. But do you find it's a difficult environment for someone to start growing a large business in Mexico? Obviously for various factors and reasons, but based on your banking experience, how successful are some of the businesses that expats set up here? Is there a failure rate that you see or anything like that? Maybe shed some light on that.
Well, maybe I just get to meet the successful ones, okay. Maybe I don't meet the ones that didn't succeed. I don't know. But in my experience, what I'm seeing here, it's 80 or 90% success rate of what I see maybe in Cabo, San Miguel, and these places that I told you I was visiting. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, we need to partner with Mexican business as well. Also, yeah, you need to get your Mexican partners. It's a lot easier. Yeah. Some things that I've seen, and it's very difficult, is like on the cultural side. It is like someone's trying to hire a great manager or a great business manager, and they don't find it. So it is because also Mexican culture is very different from American culture when it comes to work. So it might be different to find good candidates for the roles once you're growing. But once you get to it, I think there's very good talent in Mexico as well.
Perfect. Well, it's been an hour. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but if you do have any other information you'd like to share, or if anyone else has any final questions, please post it on the chat. And if not, then I think, unless you have a bit more time, I don't know if there's any more topics I want to discuss immediately. But I'm sure I'll come up with some others in the future, and there's some things that I wanted to talk to you after. But there is one topic I am very curious about now.
Go ahead.
Now that I think about it, and I know it's something you may not be able to discuss or have knowledge about, but I just spoke earlier this morning. I had a conversation with Ripple Labs, XRP. So it seems like they're the leaders out there talking to a lot of the central banks who about payment systems using crypto, and XRP being one of them. And in fact, one of the representatives from Ripple Labs is coming here to Mexico to talk to a lot of banks down here, which is something I wanted to talk to you about after. But what is the environment, and how does the banking sector feel, or the Mexican government feel, towards this whole move towards cryptocurrencies? What kind of do you hear much about adoption rates? How is that affecting the Mexican economy? Just maybe any of your thoughts, what you see from a banking perspective of what's going on with the crypto market versus the traditional banking market, and the government's rules and regulations around that down here.
Well, I think right now the Mexican banks, they might be already developing some technology to use blockchain technology to the process. Yeah. But cryptocurrencies are not recognized in the Mexican economy, meaning that they're like monopoly money until now. Yeah. So there are some exchanges where you can jump from one crypto to another, and your money will not be recognized until you make the exchange into pesos again. So I think once the government start recognizing them, we're going to see a lot of development in Mexico. I know people are buying houses with crypto in Mexico. I mean, the seller received it, then they liquidate in pesos, or they get as a trade. Like if you will trade a chicken for a cow, if you both agree, then the operation can be done. That's how also notaries and some people is doing this type of operation, because the person A is recognizing the value of the asset that the person B has, meaning this cryptocurrency, and then the operation takes place. Yeah.
So now, is there any rules or regulations with a notary or a trust, do they even care what method of payment is being used if it is crypto, or do they just need to have a dollar value that both parties agreed and the payment cleared, and thus the notary just says, yes, this transaction goes through, title changes? And have you seen any rules, regulations that's stopping payments from or government involvement in stopping payments for real estate using crypto?
Not really. The last time I checked, and it was about the amount being recognized as an income. So this amount of crypto needed to be converted into pesos and pay the taxes or the proper taxes for the operation. But after that, there was not many questions also being done.
Interesting. And maybe so. In my past life, I was a precious metals analyst. I got to speak at some of the largest conferences in Canada, wrote a newsletter, all of this stuff. And I'm seeing BRICS nations now discussing using commodity-backed current commodities, and in particular gold, but other commodities. Burkina Faso just announced they're trying to look at a gold-backed back their currency with gold. Now, Mexico is rich with minerals and resources. This is something I've learned a long time ago when I was in the mining sector talking about precious metals. To strengthen the peso, do you think there's any appetite on the Mexican central bank to consider using commodities or gold in particular? I don't think Mexico is on a gold standard. And also maybe the other question would be would they implement a gold standard or silver standard here? But does the Mexican central bank, from your understanding, do they even own any gold as an investment for the central bank? Or how many gold holdings?
I have never made that question, Finn. I will need to find out. It's very interesting. Yeah. Whatever Mexico does in the financial side has a lot to do with what the U.S. does. Yeah. And just going back to the crypto, I was receiving news that the Mexican remittances, being the Mexicans sending money to their homeland in Mexico, are being received around 10% of them, which is 5.4 billion or 5.5 billion monthly is what Mexico receives in remittances. Around 10% of that is being moved in crypto.
So, you do see there's a bit of a trend for adoption here in Mexico now.
Yes. Yeah, because of practicity, yes.
Yeah. And I follow financial markets. I have not seen a point where we're at right now. I can't even identify a bigger trend than what we're seeing right now in crypto. And it's not just about buying Bitcoin or any crypto. What it is we're having my belief is we're seeing a transformational change in the financial system, moving away from the old legacy monetary system to this new digital asset-based cryptos as it now. And the big thing for me is not really saying, okay, well, Bitcoin's my money now and I'm going to hold that. That's not what I'm focusing on. That'll be a part of it. What I do look at is payment rail systems, and that's why XRP is very interesting. But what I'm also seeing as a major trend, and this is one of the bigger trends I'm going to see, we're going to see in our lifetime, is the tokenization of assets. So for those who aren't familiar with that, what the idea or the concept is, my belief is the BlackRock, I'm going to get into BlackRock is opening up a new stock exchange in Texas. They've all openly come out and said they want to tokenize all digital or all asset classes to a digitized form. So they're going to take the treasury bond market. You're going to take the stock market. You're going to take real estate. They're all going to be using digital token representations of those assets. And now you're going to be trading those digital tokens, whether it's fractional ownership of a real estate or you own some bonds, and let's say you own $10,000 worth of bonds and you want to sell it to someone else. It's just going to be a digital transfer because each one will have its own unique ID, and you have the token keys. You own it. You can transfer it. That's where I see the future going. Do you see anything like that in the banking system in terms of implementing this whole payment rail systems with crypto, but tokenization of assets? Because you've already mentioned that real estate is being transacted with crypto. Has there been any talks with tokenization of assets down here at all, or no?
I've seen it individually been, I mean, with some, let's say, some notary or some company that is trying to do it, but not yet to that point where it's being done, in a regular basis.
Yeah,
But
because
I think it's gonna follow international trend.
Yeah, I think that the whole transfer of real estate seems to be a nightmare. And I had this discussion yesterday, and there's just so much ambiguity around it. But if you had a real estate property that had a digital token attached to it, a lot of this middlemen, lawyers / notaries, that whole layer,
it's a centralized economy.
Yeah, it could be kind of taken away with this. And I'm not saying it's going to happen next year or in the next 5 years, but I generally believe that this is going to be a big trend going forward. It's happening. It's just a slow process. But once you start to see the adoption rate, then it just becomes faster. So you mentioned that Mexico generally follows the U.S. in terms of leadership and economies and adoptions. Do you think that is still the case, or how much influence do you think China has on Mexico or European markets have on Mexico? Or is it just still dominantly U.S. based as their main ally?
Well, I think it's still the U.S. As 85% of our trade goes to the U.S. Give me 1 second. Let me just here. I need to connect my computer. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
But still our greatest trading partner. Yeah. So we kind of comply with whatever the U.S. also is doing.
Interesting. And I guess one final question, because I know I've taken up a lot of your time. You obviously seeing the rise of the BRICS nations. They're building their alliances. You have NATO and the Western world building their alliances. U.S. Mexico is really tied to the U.S. economy significantly. But do you have any insights onto what the notion or the feeling in Mexico is, whether they want to work with the BRICS nations, they want to stick with the U.S., or are they going to build their own alliance with maybe all of Mexico, Central and South America? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, some rebels and some people like what's going on with the BRICS and the idea of doing it. But it's not something that is like that big done here. Maybe Brazil, Russia, or some other places. But I think we acknowledge our strength of being a U.S. partner, and we go for that.
Yeah. And I think Mexico has always been fairly geopolitically neutral. So it's not like they... Yes. And that's why I do like it down here, is because, you do stay out of global politics quite a bit. And there seems to be more freedom and liberties down here in Mexico, which is why, the whole Financial Liberties is about discovering opportunities and options for people to seek their own financial liberties. So it's kind of what I started with. But thank you, Bernardo, for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to share in the last minute? And if not, I think we should probably wrap it up. It's been over an hour now, so.
Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, Vin, I'm here to help you out, and also your actives. Let me know how we can contribute some more. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Bernardo, for spending your time and sharing some of your information with us. Thank you for everyone who's been participating on the call here. And I think we're going to wrap it up, and we'll take care. Thank you very much.
Perfect. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you for paying attention, listening to this live stream that we did with the Q&A section with Roberto. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's any questions that I can answer, please enter it in the chat right now, and we'll go from there. That was pretty much it. Now I will, sorry I couldn't get the actual presentation screen shown on it, but there wasn't really much to show. So I went through the actual first half of the presentation that's on the YouTube live right now. That's on the YouTube channel. But if there's any other questions, then let me know in the chat, and then I can give you some ideas of what I think is going to be happening in Mexico kind of going forward, or any other topics you want to discuss. I'm here to do it. Mexican CBs, are they increasing the bank reserve the last few years? I have no idea. That's something I would have to ask Bernardo about, whether they have or not. I don't even know how much reserves they actually even have here in Mexico. But I do know that they're not very, in terms of their debt levels they have, they're very low compared to GDP. So I suspect if there's a global financial issue that comes down the pipe, Mexico will generally do very well over that transition and whatever that we're going to go through. And I suspect it's going to start this fall. So it's just one of those things where the Western worlds are going to have the main crunch of kind of a downfall, and Mexico should be fine. The central banks here are pretty stable. Even the banking sector, I've done a bit of research into it, and I actually kind of believe the banking sector here is a little more stable in terms of how they have consumer protections in certain ways. Now, there are frauds that do happen at the banking level, and I've heard many stories about that where, an account, when you go to open an account and you don't do the app right then, have been some account representatives that opened it for you. They'll open up the app in their portfolio or on their phone, and they're able to access it. So that's one thing you want to be careful of, is when you actually go to open an account and they ask you to download the app, do it right then, get it all set up. Don't say, no, you don't want to do it, because then they could actually do it on your behalf on their phone, wipe your account clean. So that's one thing you want to pay attention to. But other than that, what I did find, there's a couple of things I did find the most interesting out of that whole Q&A session was crypto and Bitcoin can be used to make purchases of real estate. And I think this is going to be something I want to cover a lot more on the channel here on YouTube, because everyone that I've seen who has a YouTube channel that talks about Mexico, they talk about real estate in different ways. I don't think anyone's ahead of the curve yet to start talking about using various cryptos here for payments and various asset purchases in Mexico. So that's something I think I could get ahead of the curve on. And I'm actually having a call tomorrow morning with someone who's a quant trader, and they've set up, they manage other actually advisory firms. They do consulting for quant trading. So it's using computerized trading algorithms and stuff like this. I don't think there's much here in the Mexican market for that. So just to give you a bit of an idea of what I'm working on is there is a financial advisory services company here that is very close to kind of winding down. The two partners that are there, one just passed away recently. The other's kind of winding it down. They don't really have many clients anymore. And they have the ability to manage clients' money, and manage it meaning provide advisory services. So you as a client can drop whatever, 50, 100 grand with them. They'll tell you what stocks to buy, open the accounts for you. How I got introduced to it was there's another person I knew from the Golden who's trading gold futures on leverage, and brought a few clients to this advisory firm that are Mexican national clients or people in Mexico, and they were knocking out of the park. I mean, this guy was getting great returns for his clients in a month period, and they had a kind of a profit sharing agreement with the client. Now, that's something you can't really, it's hard to do here in Mexico in terms of investing, is if you had an investment account with Actinver even, they'll put you into a mutual fund. They'll advise you on CETES, whatever bonds, but they don't have leverage trading vehicles. And so that's what this financial advisory service firm started to do, is offer these leverage, whether it's FX or you're trading futures contracts. And they were able to do it because they got an international advisory license as well. So they were able to open up international trading accounts that do offer the leverage that Mexican trading accounts don't. So I'm actually talking to them to see if what kind of level of interest they have of selling that financial advisory services firm. And there is a big interest on their part to either wind it down or have a buyer come in and take it over. They're asking way too much for what they have right now, but there's a potential to do that and offer that kind of service. And then the other thought would be is algo trading, bot trading is becoming a big thing. And as AI starts to get more responsive and more adaptive to the financial markets, I suspect we're going to see the rise of AI trading become more and more dominant. So you'll let the computer algorithms and AI based on metrics is that you prompted to start executing trades for. And these algorithms and trade programs are already available, but they're more based on what your parameters are for executing trades that you enter into it. This other firm is very successful as a quant trader, and that's what they specialize in. They actually advise other financial services firms, so they're kind of up there on the top of the heap chain, trying to see if we can get something going in the Mexican market. Because if based on my preliminary research, I don't see algorithmic based trading platforms available in Mexico. Maybe there are, maybe they're not. Again, it's some more due diligence I have to do. But if there is, the whole reason I even got thought about this was I've known about this company that has this advisory firm for a few months now, and I spoke to the gentleman that was doing the precious metals futures trading for him, and he was telling me that they're looking to close the business down unless they find someone to take it over or run with it. And then him and I got talking, and then it was just happened to be another lawyer in Canada that was looking to buy a business. He consulted with me. He started talking to me about what he's looking for down here in Mexico. He was already familiar with the lending markets in the US and Canada as another side business. He had partners that were borrowing in the US and lending into Canada for mortgages. And so I told him about this financial services firm that's available in Mexico, and it really piqued his interest. So that's how I had this conversation with the owner of the financial services firm on Monday. I know the numbers. I've got to crunch it, vet the license and all that, and then see if it's a viable opportunity to pursue. And I think there is a market and a potential for it, but either way, my point would be is the future is really, we're entering this whole new digital asset future, tokenization, blockchain use, this whole fintech model is what I'm calling it. And that's moving from TradFi, which is traditional finance, into this new fintech model. This is really the future. And I suspect in that the Mexican banking system will be slow to react to it. And I already know this because I spoke with XRP, the people at Ripple Labs, and the gentleman I spoke to, his manager was down in Mexico last week, talking to several of the big banks and talking to them about implementing XRP. So I know there's an initiative by them to start talking to the banks here. But Bernardo mentioned, there are some solutions that are being talked about in the banking sector here for blockchain technology use. So I don't know if it's going to be Ripple or XRP is going to be the dominant player. But what I'm saying is that this is coming down the pipe. It's great to be ahead of this curve. If we do see a bit of a financial meltdown this fall, which I suspect is going to happen, have some dry powder, because we're going to get some great crypto buying opportunities. And what I'm going to focus on in the crypto is not these meme coin, thousands of them. I'm really looking at the big players that are setting up the new financial system, the new financial rails. And so it's not just the payment system like XRP could be used for, but it's more XLM that's going to be more in the finance space. So you're going to see traditional finance industry move to this new decentralized or centralized even crypto-based, blockchain-based financial system, the fintech space. And if the banks here are going to be slow to do it, and the advisory services firms aren't even talking about it, I really think there's going to be a massive opportunity to be kind of the first in the Mexican market to be ahead of the curve, learn how all these exchanges and these crypto tokens are being used for real world assets. That's what they call it, RWA, and tokenization of them, then bringing them onto ledgers to transact with. It's not just Mexico, it's going to be worldwide, but I think that being down here in Mexico and having this ability, this is going to be ahead of the curve, and that's what I'm really excited about. So with the real estate side, thousands of agents. I get tons of inquiries from the investor and entrepreneur group, from real estate agents asking to post on the group, helping them introduce clients, market it, and even developers approaching me, which is great. It can be done, and I may consider that in the future for the group as it continues to grow. But my focus is not just on the Mexican market. It's really, which is why I started the new Financial Liberties group, the public group. The bigger picture and the broader picture in today's world is really all about this fintech adoption that's happening. And with that fintech adoption, we are still early stages of Web3. This is what they call it. So this is like now investing in the tech boom in the mid 90s, and you got to bank out 2000. We're early stages in all this. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to a bit of a crash here, whether it's real estate markets, anything, because there's going to be a great time to deploy money over the next year or two. And from there, I want to be focusing on what the next 5 to 10 year, the biggest growth opportunities I see in anything. And it's not going to be, your Walmarts or any of that stuff, or even your traditional banking. I would sell bank stocks right now, because that bank stock model, the traditional banking sector model, is going out the door, because you have the rise of these neobanks, these online banking. Everything is moving this way. The one thing, I actually was listening to a podcast and video on, and this is why I'm speaking to this quant trader tomorrow, and some other research I've been doing on the topic is a software company is going to be not obsolete, but their role is going to get diminished over the next 3 to 5 years, because AI is going to get so advanced that, and I'll give you the perfect example. I do lease financing in Canada, and I'm talking to a new vendor. We're bringing them on board, and they have an inventory management software that they sell to large corporations, like your big warehouses and stuff. And they do all the integration into their existing systems. So whether their back-end systems are based on SAP or whatever it is, they'll do the integration of the inventory management system that this company does. Why I mention it is, if I'm a large corporation and I'm using software as a service model and integrating all these other software components to run my enterprise, well, at some point in the future, AI is going to get so smart that I could just prompt AI and say, this is what I have, this is what I want to integrate, build the tech for me, and boom, within hours, you'll have the initial code all ready to go. Then you just vet it, make sure it works, integrate it, have a small team, and you're off to the races. So my suspicion is this whole software as a service model is going to get transformed very soon, and AI is going to disrupt a lot of things. Now, when you layer AI on top of finance, it's a game changer. And so we've seen the rise of crypto over the last 15 years. What the next financial system is all about is quantum finance. This is a little bit of a tidbit. So if you want to get ahead of the curve and understand where the future of finance is going to be, it's no longer your financial advisor telling you to buy this stock, that stock, none of that. It's not even going to be the governments and the central banks. I suspect in 5 to 10 years, I don't want to say we're going to see the demise of central banks or that control system, but what's inevitable is, with the rise of AI and how smart it's going to be, it's already equally smart as humans right now. In another 3 to 5 years, probably 2 years, they are talking exponentially smarter than humans. AI, and I hate to say this, but AI is going to optimize everything that we see right now. So they are going to optimize with the use of AI and the right rules and regulations and how you can use it. They're going to optimize the financial world. And that's where I see this is going, which excites me in a way, scares me in another, but where we're going to see this is I suspect that AI will be used to run the new financial world. So it's not Bitcoin. You could be invested in Bitcoin. Yeah, could we see Bitcoin take one last big run? Absolutely, it could happen. XRP and all these will still be used, but it's quantum computers with AI software and technology managing the whole financial world. That's where I think the future is actually going, which is kind of scary in a way, but it's interesting at the same time. I guess my point would be is if you can be ahead of that curve, get invested early enough, you're going to survive because you've one of the videos I just watched recently talked from Raul Powell from Real Vision. If you don't follow him, it's a good channel to follow. I'll put it up on my channel as well. I think I actually got one of his videos that I recently watched, and he talks about this next 5 years is the last 5 years that we are going to have to make any sort of decent money in retirement. And that's because after that, AI is going to be the dominant player, and the ability to make money is going to become very murky 5 years from now, which is why they talk about the global reset and a lot of these other things by 2030. I don't think it's the global reset. You could have put on the conspiracy hat and thought, oh, there's this big agenda to wipe out everything, take full control. That agenda is because probably AI is going to be able to do it all. And it's not really, it's out of their control is really where I suspect it is. And so we do have the next 5 years to bank out. And it won't be in your traditional investment landscape that you had possibly been used to in the past. The next 5 years, you're really going to have to rethink where the future is going, whether you agree with it or not. It's happening, and be ahead of the curve. That's how you're going to benefit from all of this, is what I plan to do. And I plan to get a little more active in sharing that kind of knowledge and putting it out there, but also building the Financial Liberties community, sharing that knowledge within the paid, community membership that I'm planning, and staying ahead of the curve. And just to give you guys a bit of background, I mean, that's how I found 3 major trends in my life that I was able to take advantage of. One was I graduated university with a finance degree, but I went right into tech right away. So that was in the mid 90s, 95, I graduated. But I started working in the computer industry instead of going and getting a career in Bay Street in Canada, which is the equivalent of Wall Street, which I could have done easily, but I was into computers. I wanted to go travel after the first year of university. And so I caught onto the whole internet boom and became a partner with Macromedia, which were the tools that were used to make websites. And I got into developing websites, doing multimedia work for corporations, mostly computer-based training and web-based training applications. So taking a corporation's training materials, turning it into computer-based and web-based training with the whole tracking and learning management system behind it. So I got to ride that whole tech boom. Then the bust came a couple of years later, budgets started getting away. So I stopped doing client work, jumped back into what I wanted to do, is finance and investing, and started learning a lot for the first couple of years after that. And then I got caught into the precious metals boom. And that was in 2004, 2005. I started understanding the fiat currency system. Guess you could say I took a bit of the red pill of understanding how the financial world was set up by my diving into gold, and became a precious metals monetary. I don't want to call myself an expert, but I was really very, very knowledgeable about precious metals, gold, and how the existing financial system was set up. The manipulations that went on. I can go on about that, but I'm not going to. The point is from 2005 to 2012, 2013, I got to ride that whole precious metals wave up. And then in 2013, 2012, I saw it was busting and it was going to correct, and the resource boom was going to be over. But during that time, towards the end of it, met Jeff Berwick, started Stockhouse in Canada, largest financial website. We started a newsletter, right? So I started writing a financial newsletter, subscriber-based, paid for. He did the marketing, I did the research and writing. He got me speaking at the conferences in Canada, so I actually got to speak at some of the largest conferences in the mining sector. The timing was kind of bad because we're at the peak of the market, but nonetheless, it was a great experience. And then I jumped into the cannabis space, realizing Canada was going to legalize it, and started speaking at conferences, right? Writing about it, involved in some of the raises. So I got to ride that whole cannabis boom from late 2013, early 2014 to 2018, 2019. I told everyone sell there. It was the top of the market. It was right on the call. And then, for the last few years, kind of been floating around Mexico, been involved in crypto. So when I was writing about gold, we heard about Bitcoin back then at $10, and Jeff went on to cover it, and he knocked it out of the park. He grew a major subscriber base. I mean, the guy's got thousands of people subscribed to his newsletter. I think last I heard, I don't even know the exact number, but the guy makes about probably over $1 million just on subscription for his newsletter. So I should have stuck with him, but I left him and started my own thing. But had I plowed in and stayed in with the crypto space when Bitcoin was under $10, it'd be a bit of a different story right now. So anyways, my point is the next major trend that I see we're at right now is not just Bitcoin going up, but this whole fintech, this whole transformation from the whole old legacy business environment, not just banking everything, and moving into Web3. And I got caught into the whole internet boom right from the beginning. This Web3, this whole layer of all this technology that's going to be coming in terms of crypto adoption, blockchain adoption onto the internet. This is all what Web3 is all about, AI. And this is going to be bigger than anything I think I've ever seen so far. Gold was great. The whole internet revolution starting of it was great. Cannabis was okay. But this is going to be something that's going to be a global game changer, bigger than anything I've seen and been a part of, which is why I want to get ahead of the curve on this. I'm diving in and doing all my research, due diligence. And I suspect that if you're going to bank out, your last chance to bank out in our lifetime, I don't know how old you are, but is going to be this next 5 to 10 years. After that, it becomes very, very murky, where we could kind of just go into a lull period with AI managing and taking over. The opportunities will be gone at that point. So is why I encourage people to start paying attention to what's happening with this global reset they keep talking about. It's not so much that they want to reset it, probably is, but they know that this whole new paradigm shift is happening. It's already being in place, and you want to be ahead of that curve. So anyways, that's a bit of my rant on that. It was about 15, 20 minutes. And I don't know if there's any other questions or anything else you guys want to talk about. There's a few of you still here, so that's a good thing. But how that will play out in Mexico is, all this new fintech, this Web3 adoption is going to be happening in Mexico too. Might be slower than the US and Western nations, but being ahead of the curve here in Mexico will be great, offering financial services in and around that and being one of the leaders here in Mexico. Great opportunity. I'll do the coverage, whether that financial advisory services firm is an option or not. They're asking way too much. I'm not willing to even consider that with some investor capital to even buy it. I mean, it's just unreasonable. I could start my own financial services firm and licenses and get it done in 6 months for a fraction of what these guys want. So, but opening up that financial advisory services firm, focusing on precious metals, focusing on the fintech, what all these changes, I suspect that financial advisory services firm, will make clients a lot more money because we're going to be ahead of the curve, but we will be front running the national banks, the real estate markets, the tokenization of assets here in Mexico, where in 5 to 10 years from now, you could sell that financial services firm to some big boy players. And I have a really good connection now with Actinver, as you can see. I'm kind of staying in the loop with them and continuing to talk with them, or my contact anyways, to see where they're at with the whole fintech and movement. And you could build a whole book of business around this, get ahead of the curve, and sell it off to a big firm like that. So what is your best fintech stocks? Where can you buy silver in Mexico? Well, silver in Mexico is Guadalajara. They have a whole gold and silver trade around there. But silver itself, you can buy the Mexican Libertads. They used to sell them at Banco Azteca. I bought a bunch when I was living in Acapulco 12 years ago, or actually even a little more than that, 14 almost years ago. But they're hard to come by, very expensive. In Guadalajara, you can buy what they call silver grains, which is pure, but it's the grains that the jewelry makers buy, melt it down and make their jewelry. So that's the kind of silver that's the most reasonably priced. Now, there's gold there. You can buy coins and grains of gold as well. I know a guy who's buying tons of gold from Guadalajara, and the one other guy here I knew, he's the one that recommended the dealer in Guadalajara. So if anyone's interested, it is grains. It's not 1 ounce coins. These 1 ounce Libertads, the silver, hard to come by. You can still get them. Premiums are high. The gold coins, probably even tougher. So Mexico is not really the best place to buy physical. If you want to buy physical, I've got options within North America, Switzerland, and Singapore, if it's big enough dollar amounts to actually get them and bought there, stored in vaults. So when I was writing precious metals and writing the newsletter, I wrote a report called Getting Your Gold Out of Dodge. It was a 100-page report, and it had been vetted by a lot of the mints, like the Perth Mint, a few other things. But I covered all of the options to buy metals through online dealers that are vetted, but more so all the private vaulting facilities that are around the world that were offering storage and allocated gold. So, that you would have your gold held in the right form. So it's on your name and it's allocated to you, not unallocated, encumbered with everyone else. There's a whole thing around gold in itself. But that's it for the gold and silver in Mexico. Best fintech stocks. So here's what I think is going to happen in the fintech market. You have thousands of cryptos out there right now. Some of them, majority of them are going to go away in the next few years. They won't even be around. They won't survive, because you still have this migration from the old financial system to the new one. It's still a regulated market. XRP was the only one that went through the SEC securities, and they had a lawsuit around it, but that's been dealt with. The fine's getting paid. It's got regulatory clearance. XRP has been in talks with central banks around the world. The banking sector is doing it. XLM is another one. So that's the ones that I'm looking at for using as your dollar for payment transfers. There are a few others that are DeFi based, which are going to be used for the layers, the blockchain layers, and the tokens used for examples, for borrowing money, or leasing equipment or getting a mortgage. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking at and evaluating. But what I suspect is happening is twofold. Because those cannot still be sold as securities in the US, there are firms and private equity are buying into these companies that are set up to build this, but they're starting off as publicly traded vehicles. So my suspicion is that's where there's going to be two investment options. Is you can invest with these pre-IPO companies. They're the true owners of the technology, and they'll own it as a security, a stock. They'll bring it out onto the the stock market, but then they'll have the tokens that are used for the actual payments and transfers. So there's two things that are going to happen. There's a stable coin side of it. That's just your payment system, like what you use to make the payments in those various blockchains. And there'll be tons of stable coins coming out, by the way. This is going to be a dime a dozen thing. Hell, any company can come out with their own stable coin. But it's the companies that are going to go through the securities regulation that have the true ownership, and that's where you get the upside, because they get to, it's like buying stocks in a new startup. It gets adopted. Well, the stock owners and the people that set it up, the equity owners of it, get the true capital gains. And those are things I'm looking at. So I keep going back to XRP because I think it's the dominant player right now. But XRP has been doing some private raises. There's one platform out there that, and you couldn't, no one, the average person couldn't get into it. You had to be very well connected to get into their private raise for it. But there's a platform for those that were involved in the private raise or were existing employees of XRP who own stock. There's a private exchange that's set up that you can actually buy those securities from them. I'm reaching out to them. I think their minimum buy-in was $5,000 to buy into XRP. But the fact that they actually got access to it and now can get access to these shares of Ripple Labs, that's where I see the future kind of going. So let me do some more research into some of the fintech stocks that I like. But anything that's going to do with AI, quant trading, these fintechs, any of these pubcos or pre-IPO companies, those are the ones I want to look at and do the assessments on. So when I started in the cannabis sector, I really identified, okay, who are the leaders that are going to be in this space and how do I get invested with them? They were doing private raises before going public, and those were the best times to get invested. I suspect we're at that point right now in the fintech world where these are still, majority of them are private companies. They're doing public raises, but why they will get the adoption than your thousands of crypto coins is because they have the banking of the VC, or the backing of the VC capital. They have the backing eventually of the securities regulators. So I would rather put my money on that than to buy a Dogecoin or some meme coin or NFT, any of that. I really don't even want to touch any of those things. My plan for the investing and sharing the information is really to look at the leaders that are going to be in the fintech space, or that, as part of the regulated market. When they're doing some raises, seeing if I can get people into it. Generally, they have to be a credit investor to be involved, but sometimes they let friends round in. And even if they can't get into those raises, looking at other options to participate in that, or wait till they become public, take a bit of a ride on that. But generally, I find the best opportunities is to get invested when they're private. And I'll be looking and starting to dig around and talking to companies, just like I talked with Ripple Labs and a few others and this quant trading firm. And one of the big finance guys I know out of the US, they do big project financing. He just opened up a broker-dealer license in the US. So he will have access to private placement deals. And I start telling him to find me some deals in this whole fintech world. Perfecto. All right. We'll talk soon. I'm going to end this now. Ciao.